Secure some price from the McLaren Grills Radio Row here at the 111th Grey Cup Fan Fest in the Family Zone.
Yeah, and all three of us are very excited because White Spot is apparently on the way.
Oh, fantastic.
I don't know if it's from the comfort menu. I don't know if it's mini Yorkies, if it's braised beef burgers, pot roaster chicken pot pie. Might be triple O burgers. We'll see. I'm going to guess. A little easier to transport.
Yeah, that's
in the pot roast.
That's it. Thank you, White Spot, for serving lunch here.
Do you know that I was at White Spot last night? I swear,
don't doubt it.
I swear to you, I had an hour to kill before my daughter's game. Went to White Spot. You should too. Go check out the comfort menu. Dave Naylor will now that he's in town.
Yes, he's tableside TSN CFL insider with plenty swirling around the BC lines. How you doing, first of all? Nice to see you. Nice to have you back on the show.
Well, it's actually, I think, my first appearance ever on the
digital version.
On
the digital version.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Different platforms, same host, same guest. Yeah, I'm doing well. You know, like it's these are long weeks, especially now they started on Tuesday. You know, it's it makes our job a little easier because we tend to be we're higher kind of workload on the earlier part of the week and a little lighter at the back end, which I'll take. And looking forward to a great game on Sunday. I think there's a way the Argonauts can win this game. Has to go a certain game script. If they're down 17-3 after a quarter, I don't like their chances. But their defense and special teams has a way of mucking things up.
Is it Canada versus Winnipeg?
You know, I don't feel the hate for the Bombers.
No,
I honestly don't. I think there's people that are sick of them. But I think there's a measure of respect built into that sickness. You know, like that you're like, you know, and you know, not unlike a way when people saw the Patriots coming all the time, right? Like you may have got sick of them, but it was hard to disrespect what they did and how. And I would speak. I'm going to go beyond football here for a second. Like the Bombers have had 5 straight crowds of like 32,166 or whatever their sellout is.
Yeah.
I mean, you used to say that in the prairies after mid-September, the crowds dip because of the weather. And people aren't, more hardy than they used to be, but they are packing that stadium.
But 2 nice barns now in the prairies.
Oh, yeah.
So that helps too, right?
But one was full for a playoff game and one wasn't.
Oh,
yes.
Right.
And
Yeah, true.
And I this week on SportsCenter, last week on SportsCenter, I stuck my neck out a little bit and said, hey, we're going to stop calling the Riders the greatest fans in the CFL. If the place 5 hours to the east is selling out playoff games, and they're not.
I was going to say there was a former CFL commissioner who once called Regina the heartbeat of the CFL. I still believe that, but these days there is no question which market is most switched on to the league.
You know, it's nice
it's the Manitoba capital, and just walking we're downtown normally in our studio. We got a window out onto the Hornby Street. The amount of blue and gold that I've seen here this week far outweighs any other team, and I think it would be a lot easier to be Canada versus the Bombers if that didn't mean rooting for the
Toronto Argonauts. Yes. Well, and here's the other kind of nice thing about the Bombers being kind of the dominant fan base in the CFL is, and again, I think we all respect the Riders and what they've meant to this league, and at times that they have really carried the business needle and the fan needle. But for people who weren't CFL fans, there was always a counterpunch to that, right? Yeah, well, it's all they have, right? And it's like pop your balloon, right? And it's kind of nice that nobody can say that about Winnipeg.
That's true.
They have like the best team in the NHL in their backyard.
The best team in the
NHL. Their CFL team is bigger than their NHL team, at least when it comes to being a ticket.
And I'm not trying to be negative on Saskatchewan. I just mean that it always bugs me when people say that and try to discredit what Saskatchewan's done and have continue to do.
Yeah.
And they can't throw that at the Bomber fans.
That's true.
Okay, let's get on to the task at hand here, the big news locally. Ask you first and foremost, do you expect Ryan Rigmaiden to be the general manager of the BC Lions at some point announced next week?
Yeah, general manager or perhaps co-general manager. I think there's an elevation coming here. And I think, the signature on that is sometimes in this time of years, you got to read the clues because teams aren't trying to make news in Grey Cup week. But the fact that he's pulled himself from other considerations, I think, is a pretty good indication of where that's going. And,
you believe he'll have final say, that it will be his show. He'll hire the coach and he'll be have the last word on personnel.
I think that's certainly possible. Yeah, I think that's certainly possible. Yeah. And I mean, he's a guy who's been on a lot of, radars for a while. And then, that bleeds into the Rick Campbell thing, right? Who has the co-GM title right now as head coach. And look, we've been talking to the senior people with the Lions throughout this week, and they are not, giving away much about where that's going. In fact, what they're saying is that, they are gathering, information and pros and cons, but that they're going to start digging into that on Monday. Now, there would be a reason for them to frame it that way, right? Because nobody wants to fire your head coach in the middle of Grey Cup week. In fact, I think there's an order for the league that you not do that.
Well, especially when you're hosting.
So,
yeah.
And again, I think we get into a bit of a silly season here. We get into the thin line between reporting and predicting. Mm-hmm. They're not the same things. But would anybody be surprised if next Monday there's an announcement about a change in head coach of the BC Lions? I don't think anybody would.
And it's airing Wednesday, incidentally. But I don't know if that's Rick in Edmonton or if that's the Lions themselves.
The symmetry of Rick in Edmonton based on his dad's history. I mean, is there a part of him that's sort of making it almost a mutual part in a ways here? Like, does he see that as a better opportunity for him in the now, a chance to start clean?
The answer is I don't know because he's not talking about it, right?
Yeah.
But you can certainly see why that would make some sense, and it dovetails with a couple of things, right? Like we believe Ed Hervey is going to be the GM in Edmonton. Okay. Again, hasn't been announced yet. Another guy who's not doing a lot of talking right now. To be honest,
doesn't do a lot of talking at the best of times.
More than he used to.
That's
more than
fair,
he used to.
fair.
But right now he is not reachable, we might say, and so. Again, look at what's going on in Edmonton. They just made the president a guy who was, a offensive lineman for the team in its glory years. Rick Lalasheur is on the ground there. Again, this is a guy who's as, green and gold as they come.
Still a governor. Yeah.
When he wasn't the Lions president,
he wasn't the Lions
into
president.
Him and his wife Joan the other day.
Absolutely. It's almost like that part was a dream, like he's been in Edmonton for like 60 years, except for those 5 in BC. And then you look at it and say, okay, Ed Hervey. What does Ed Hervey represent? Represents the old guard of the Elks. And I think they want to reconnect with alumni. A big part of the disconnect there has been with alumni. So if you start bringing back ex-players and ex-coaches and people from the community, Ed Hervey has never left Edmonton. Like he's had jobs in BC and in Hamilton, but he's always had a residence in Edmonton. That's home. That's the only home he's ever known in Canada. So, for a guy who's from Los Angeles, you can't be more Edmontonian than that.
So G. Roy Simon sees Ed Hervey being repatriated back to Edmonton. I'm guessing G. Roy's a little jealous that he's not being repatriated to BC, and he probably sees a little bit of a cap now on where he's going to go within Edmonton. No,
I would think so. Yeah, and I think, and the question is, like, do you keep him? Right, like what? That's I think the question. Or do you
does he accept or taking a step back,
or those kinds of things? And there was some pretty good debate right down to the end of the year, but whether or not they were going to keep him and potentially even Jarius Jackson. I think it's hard when you come through an era like this because if you clean house and have Rick Campbell and Ed Hervey and whoever, and next year you're 4-8. People are going to see it as year one of the new regime.
Right.
But if you keep those guys and you're 4-8,
it's more of the same.
That's a hard one to sell to your fans.
Yeah.
So, I think a lot of this stuff gets decided not necessarily on, kind of what's happened in the past, but what the future might look like if things go awry.
What are you hearing on Buck Pierce? Because my understanding is if Rick does move on to Edmonton, that Buck Pierce would be the former Lions quarterback would be a candidate to be the head coach here, currently the offensive coordinator.
And he may have jewelry by the end of the weekend.
For the Winnipeg, more jewelry.
Yeah.
Well, here's an interesting thing on that. About a month ago, Farhan Walji and I were talking, and we said, who's the list of people that are ready to be head coaches?
I was thinking this too. Now? Yeah.
And we were like, holy smokes. It starts with Buck Pierce. Keep going, right? And some of those guys that have been in the cycle, whose names are coming up because Calgary's been down. Monson's a tough sell because he just got fired. Killam's a tougher sell because he just got fired.
Yeah.
And those guys were good names who were kind of rising to the surface, right? And you start going through it. Like, go through the coordinators on every team in the league.
Like buzz name coordinators.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, at 5-1, we were sitting there going Maximic and Phillips, maybe. But when you go 4-9 from that point forward, you become a tougher sell, unquestionable. I mean, I would still like to think that Jarius gets an opportunity because Wally Bonham will tell you he coached few better leaders than Jarius Jackson.
Well, and I think he did a decent job in really difficult circumstances in Edmonton, right? As well. But it's just like there just isn't that sort of crop of obvious candidates there has been the last few years. So I think that makes Buck. I mean, again, Buck tied to Rick Maiden from
Winnipeg
days.
Yeah.
We know he interviewed in Saskatchewan last year for the job that eventually went to Corey Mays. So he's been in the cycle. He's at the Grey Cup again. He's familiar to the GM. Again, this is the reading the clues season. Would make a lot of sense.
So just a few things by way of, in case you haven't. Rick Campbell is out of contract at the end of this year. That's the announcement was that he signed to 2024. So unless they extended him without telling anyone.
I was under the impression he had a year left. But
did he?
Okay. That is my impression, but I'll be honest.
I'm just going off the announcements. What actually
sometimes in this league, people do get extended
very quietly. Okay.
Yeah, just especially if it's not a substantial one. They're just tacking a year onto somebody's deal. That happens sometimes without a release going out.
Okay, good clarification there.
So I'm not saying that I'm correct about that because I stand to be corrected, but it's not unthinkable that could happen.
Okay, my understanding is Ryan Phillips is under contract next year. Jordan McSimic and Mike Benavidez, the other two coordinators, are not. Ryan Rignaden started with the Lions, went to Winnipeg, helped build this astonishing 5-in-a-row team, and so that's where he would have had the background with Buck Pierce.
Yep.
And last year, the Saskatchewan opening, Dave, Buck Pierce pulled himself from that. Did he? Or there was a family situation with Buck.
I think it may have not been an ideal time for him to move.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that was going to make it difficult for him to up and move at that point. And we'll see that may still be the case.
Right.
That's the reporting that has to come here. He asked me the other day about Neil McAvoy, who's co-GM right now of the Lions. Where does Neil McAvoy fit in a Ryan Rignaden world?
Or is he just completely malleable to whoever comes in? So you can,
as he has been.
I've always felt like there are certain organizations in sports where you see a guy who is kind of the constant, right? And he's not there for his ego, and he's not there to try to gather as much power as he can. And he kind of keeps the culture consistent a little bit. And he's helpful. And he's helpful. I can absolutely see
institutional knowledge.
Yeah, I could see Neil McAvoy in that kind of role, that sort of situation. Absolutely. That, again, makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Broadly skilled Neil. He's worked in all sorts of different departments.
But I think what Dave mentions about he's not after himself. He's not after a power grab here. So he can survive administrations, right? And that's pretty rare.
I can remember damn near 20 years ago now, Neil's name surfacing for a GM opening back east and talking to him. And he was not particularly inclined in leaving Vancouver. If there's look, I think Neil, if he loves three things outside of family, it's football, Vancouver, and the British Columbia Lions.
Yeah.
So I would suspect that there's a role for Neil in the Lions den when Rignaden takes over. Okay. Anything else that you're hearing, perhaps on the commissioner side of things?
You know what?
Be the successor there. Have we discounted Farhan Lalji and Glenn Suter, the TSN crew?
I am not discounting anyone because there are no, like, I have asked a lot of people, who's on your radar? Who do you think? And I am not getting a lot of feedback on that. In fact, even the process, they're doing a little bit of legwork on sort of the profile and how it's going to go, but nothing's going to be approved until the Board of Governors meeting in December. I thought it might actually get approved here and the process would start, but we're still like 3 weeks, a month away from even the start of the process. So, and look, I think, somebody was saying to me in many of the conversations I've had around is that, there's there is some urgency. And one of the issues that the person cited as for urgency was, the ownership of the Toronto Argonauts, which is going to change in 2025 because the ownership of MLSE is changing. Yeah. Right. And I think anytime you've got a company like a situation where a team is going to change ownership through a corporate transfer, and that transfer is going to involve some bigger priorities. I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know, right? The Maple Leafs and the Raptors and such are going to be bigger priorities for this new owner of Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment. Where do the Argos fall in that? That is, I think, Randy said that he had a conversation with Edward Rogers, I think he said 10 days ago. And that all signs are pointing positively and things like that. But I know there are people in the league that are aware that there's a transition coming and want to make sure it goes smoothly.
Especially when the new owner is not the rights holder and the competitor to the rights holder.
He doesn't seem to have a business interest that lines up with his interest. That's what it seems.
Although Keith Pelley's a former Argos president. He's now running MLS.
I don't want to speak
out of both. He's got affection for the CFL.
I don't want to speak out of both sides of my mouth. I said maybe earlier this week, I want somebody that does have at least the joie de vivre of Randy Ambrosie, and a lot of the immediate ex-players or media guys, whether it's Suits or Ford or whomever, they have that. But I think you do need some business acumen. Do you?
Well, here's the buzz term I've been hearing that people say they want in the next commissioner: return on investment.
Yeah.
ROI.
Yeah.
Right. If there's an idea, because one of the things that I think, again, I think Randy did a lot of good things and a lot of tough circumstances and had some real check marks. I could go through them, but the negative side of his review from people is that there were some real substantial investments in things like expansion to Atlantic Canada, like CFL 2.0, the global players, and the return on investment from those things.
He was an ideas guy, but he wasn't an execution guy. Is that
it? The idea of doing things like the global thing was it's neat to have the global players in the league, but they didn't do that just to change the flavor of the player pool. Right. They did it because they believed it was a way to generate revenue.
Yeah,
and that revenue has not come. And I think most people would say they don't see the signs that we're going to have a deal in Austria, and streaming rights, and it was an outside the box idea. The challenge of this league for the last 40 years is how do we find new revenue streams? I asked somebody about CFL 2.0 who was on the board when it was approved. I said, did you guys, weren't you a little more skeptical than you shouldn't have been more skeptical this could produce revenue? And the person said to me, nobody had a better idea. Yeah. So that's part of why you try things, right? Because this is a league that's got to try things.
They're sharing the pot 10 ways now with this.
Genius Sports.
Genius Sports. So it's the 9 member clubs and Genius Sports. It's an equity partner. You mentioned expansion, Dave. Blake and I have said it many, many times that when Ottawa was repatriated, it really injected some life and enthusiasm back into the league. Not to mention a 10th team gets you a balanced schedule.
Normal schedule.
Oh my goodness. Is there any hope for Halifax, Moncton, Quebec City in the near term to get into this league?
I believe that the prospect of building a CFL suitable stadium in a market that does not have a team is an almost insurmountable challenge. Yeah. I don't know how you do that, especially, it's, the economics of the CFL are kind of wonky enough that it's hard to get somebody to make a $350 million investment for your business that they might lose money at.
I hear you. I can't get over it because it's been 25 years since I've been to Pep Stadium in Laval, and I know they've made a little improvements there, but you're telling me a 25,000 seat stadium that both the CFL team and the University of Laval, who might be able to sell it out, doesn't make sense, particularly when you're talking about a public institution, a university, and there's got to be
it's been an idea that's been around for, it's not a new idea, and Laval's not a new phenomenon. So why has there been zero traction there?
I know Jacques Tanguay, the financier of the Laval Rouge and Or, has never really been. He's territorial. It's a fiefdom thing.
Well,
so then let me ask you this then: if it's insurmountable for these Canadian communities, are we trying the United States again?
I have bounced that off of quite a number of people in the last month or so, because you got to remember what led us down this path 31 years ago. Out of ideas for new revenue, right? And the UFL is, I've already said, I believe that they need more business traction in 2025 if they're going to survive. And they have a team in St. Louis that has 30,000 season ticket holders or something like that, right? Like if the UFL went, belly up, would it behoove the Canadian Football League to come in and pick off St. Louis as its 10th team?
Much like Baltimore back in the day, which really supported the CFL for those years where they didn't have
absolutely. People say, "Wow, they in the NFL." I don't know if the NFL is going back to St. Louis.
No, I don't. Twice failed in St. Louis.
I don't think they're going back to St. Louis.
I shouldn't say it's failed. Stan Kroenke.
Yeah, they moved.
Got a way better deal.
Yeah, failed is a relative.
Who's one of the biggest supporters of U.S. expansion is Wally Waddle. He always thought it could work.
He told Farhan that in a sit down this summer. So I don't know that there's going to be a mandate for that, but I think if the next commissioner says, again, you got to remember how they did it 31 years ago. It was completely crisis driven. Yes. And maybe the time to expand to the U.S. is when you're not driven by a crisis, right? When you've actually got the plan that you can do it, you can execute it properly. You have a vision, you have appropriate timelines instead of handing out franchise in mid-February and kicking off in July, which is essentially what they did. And had to do, but
the other thing with the Atlantic scenario, though, it is getting cheaper and cheaper to build these prefab temporary, but they're not temporary stadiums. Like, do you just go that route and it'll look like it's Friday Night Lights? It'll look like a great Texas high school stadium, maybe, but do you just settle at that?
Had a conversation with somebody senior in the league about exactly that yesterday, and their position was, if there was a plan to build a permanent stadium, we would be okay with that as a bridge,
but not as a permanent.
But you can't just build that and say, here's your CFL stadium. We're done.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
Well, the one thing I'm very happy about is that we're not talking about selling off this league to the XFL and the Rock.
No, well, we're not, and
not yet.
I mean, even I'll tell you this, and you guys know when that was going on, I was convinced it was pretty serious. Now that it's done and in the rearview mirror, if you have conversations with people at the league and find out how serious it was, like it was even further down the road, even further down the road than I thought it was at the time. Like they got into real, like, granular discussions about what the dimensions of the field was going to be.
Oh my God!
A whole bunch of hybrid rules between 4-down football and 3-down football.
Down football.
That train was moving down the track.
Every other possession, you get 4 downs.
And we'll have short end zones in Memphis.
Yes,
only
yes. That's why all the scores in Memphis were 13-9.
That's right.
So much for higher scoring football.
Great seeing you again. Thanks for the time.
Thanks so much for letting me drop by, guys. Enjoy your week. See ya.
This is Garrison Price wrapping up from the McLaren Grills Radio Row, taking the show on the road. Did you enjoy yourself?
I think this is a really fun place, especially if I get to go on the bouncy castles.
You're looking at the bouncy castles. You've been eyeing the bouncy castles all morning, everybody. And let me say, this was a popular spot yesterday, I understand. I think the weather might have driven some people inside here. The bouncy castles, not just for children, I'm told. There was a lot of adult usage yesterday.
It's an Olympic event, isn't it?
Yes. It's getting there. We're dominating. Okay. Text us 77840. You're trying to get me in trouble.
I am.
778-402-9680. Email live at scarsonprice.com. All of it's the Great Clips inbox. Great clips.
It's going to be great.
No, it's going to be great. So we both spent some time with Lions kicker Sean White at the media party the other night. I know he felt good about his chances to win CFL Special Teams Player of the Year. I think there was a little bit of a legacy sentiment here. Maybe he should get one as a nominee 2 years in a row and 3 times total. Alas, the voters went with Janarian Grant, the fine Toronto Argonauts returnman. He had 3 punt return touchdowns and a kick return touchdown. And he bested, and we're talking about like one of the great return guys in league history. Like he's comparable with the Gizmo Williams and some of those guys.
Well, that's it. I think it's a nostalgia pick because he's sort of resurrected the art.
He really has. I was just going to say it's a bit of a lost art, and he does it magnificently well. And he's averaging 14 yards per punt return. That's exceptional, and it's better than his career average, 24 yards per kick return. So anyways, the Lions shut out from the player awards. Amar Doman did win the commissioner's award for service to the league, and just a few years in too. But I think, worthy of that award. Former Lion Adam Bighill with the Tom Pate Award for community service. If you follow Adam or the Bombers on their social channels, he's just a good human. He was here. He did so much for the community here. He's done a ton for the community there in Winnipeg. Really sad that he doesn't get a chance to play in this game. That said, he's going to the Hall of Fame one day, Adam Bighill. There's no doubt about that. And then Brady Oliveira with the rare double. The Bombers running back wins the most outstanding player and the most outstanding Canadian player award. He is just the 4th Canadian ever to win the CFL most outstanding player. Russ Jackson won it. Tony Gabriel won it, and New Westminster's John Cornish won it once upon a time. I was surprised Andrew Harris wasn't on that list. I thought Andrew had 1 year.
I could see that.
He could have won. Anyways, good night at the CFL awards, and it's going to be a fun weekend here. Boy, the weather today, and I got to say, last week when I looked at the forecast, Blake, I was like, oh my God, these poor Grey Cup visitors, because it called for rain, and more rain and atmospheric. It actually wasn't that bad yesterday. It rained a little bit where I was, but there was
not much. And today's supposed to be decent.
Yeah.
A little bit rainy in the weekend, but there's enough indoor stuff here. And of course, on game day, while you'd like the walk to the game to be a little drier, ultimately you're inside for the game, so it doesn't matter. But the fact is, some of these Grey Cup festivities have been able to happen with clear skies or clearish skies. It's a bonus. It's great.
Yeah. No, I think we did better than expected.
Yeah.
If you were forecast watching earlier in the week. And look, if you're not heading to anything Grey Cup or the Canucks this weekend, of course, they play back-to-back, both games at Rogers Arena, and good of the team to move the game till after the Grey Cup on Sunday against Nashville. How about this? Number 1 undefeated 16-0 UBC men's basketball hosts number 2 University of Victoria 7-1, both Friday night 7:30, Saturday night 6 p.m. at War Memorial Gymnasium. The esteemed Howard Samura tells us this is the first time this has happened in 33 years where this Georgia Strait rivalry has featured number 1.
Wow.
And number 2, that happened over on the island at UVic at the time. It was so long ago, Kevin Hansen was an assistant coach for UBC. He's been the head guy for 25 years now. Hey, why not get out and watch some fantastic basketball between the 2 top teams in the country? And like UBC even has a win over Carleton. So you know that.
Yeah.
UVic's only losses to Rhode Island. I mean, you're playing an NCAA Division I school, so otherwise they're undefeated Canadian competition. In fact, they were also down in Mexico. Howard Kelsey put on a basketball tournament.
If you like basketball and you live in Victoria, if you haven't checked out the gym in Victoria to watch it, it's a great, classic, intimate, brand new facility. It's fabulous. Go see a game there too.
We will miss. I know they're not on television as much as Mariners fans would like here. But Dave Sims is one of the great play-by-play men in baseball, and he's been calling Mariners games for a fabulous guy, too. Met him a couple of times down there at T-Mobile now. I was going to call it Safeco for a sec. Dave Sims has accepted a job to succeed John Sterling, the legendary play-by-play voice of the New York Yankees. So he is leaving the Mariners television booth for that gig. So I'm put out a video yesterday thanking everybody in the Pacific Northwest for their support for the last 18 years. I'll say this. Good that New York is paying attention to what is a kind of an outpost market in Major League Baseball, because Dave is absolutely worthy. I know once upon a time he worked back on WFAN in the early years of sports suckery. 71 years old as well.
And he's getting the new gig.
And he's getting the new gig, like the gig with the New York Yankees.
Maybe ageism isn't a thing.
No. Yeah, so congratulations to Dave. Looking forward to him calling Yankees games, those clips, and also looking forward, of course, to whoever the Mariners hire, because that's a plum gig too.
Yeah.
Have you applied?
I have not. Okay. I don't think I can do baseball. I can't spot pitches. I'm not very good at spotting pitches.
He's got bad eyes this
Well,
time.
It's not even that. I just
can't track a golf ball, can't track pitches. Slider low and away.
Yeah.
We did nearly 2,000 votes on yesterday's Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. Boy, you folks really wanted to vote on this. Do you feel bad for Bo Horvat? Yes or no? The people said.
People said no.
Percentage?
78.
81. Beware the comments if you're going to go into the comments on this poll question.
Yeah. There's a lot of feelings, a lot of strong feelings in the poll question.
I'll read some of the tamer ones.
Okay.
Guillermo, no, we needed to talk to D-Man more. That's the business of pro hockey. Steve, I mean, it sucks for Bo that essentially his entire career will have been spent playing for shitty teams, but half of that is entirely self-inflicted. So no, there's about 100 million reasons why I don't feel bad for him. Well, it wasn't that rich a contract, but I hear what you're saying.
Over the course of his career, it's probably 100 million reasons.
Calvin says he got his bag. Good riddance. A lot on the contract. B said, why should we feel bad for Bo? Have you seen his contract? And then there are others. Grayson, what a stupid question. Why is this even a poll? How can you feel bad for someone that got over $60 million playing hockey? And then the hashtag here, Blake, do better.
People always say that, the money doesn't buy happiness thing. It is actually true. Are you sure? It makes parts of your life easier, I think.
It really does.
I would love to win the lottery and I would love to test myself on that theory. I really would too. But I think ultimately it is true.
If you won the lottery, would you still do the show?
No. Sorry.
Would you finish the season?
Yeah, I think I would do that.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this recently, actually, because
you're thinking you're going to win?
Well, my mom now likes to play the big ones, right?
Yeah.
She won a.
You think she's going to share with you?
So she won it. Well, she's close enough to the finish line that I think I'd inherit it.
Even if she was
not
like,
that I'm
"You're
rooting
not
for
gonna get
that.
it."
I mean, it may be 10 years away. She won a 50-50 at the Seas this summer. And so now she's playing everything.
Oh, really?
Well, she feels she's on a streak.
She thinks she's quote unquote good at this.
Well, I think she feels like, someone is shining down on her.
Yes.
Yeah. I was like, Mom, the Seas 50-50. It's a crowd of 6,000. It's much longer odds than the Powerball. So, anyways, I think I would finish the season with you.
Oh, thanks.
And I might even buy sponsorship the next year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Just to like vanity sponsorship?
Well, just, to promote something, a cause. I'm sure I'd be involved in some sort of charitable cause. I would adopt something as a patron, and then I would advertise with you.
The Matsakaris Foundation?
No, I don't think we'd name it after. No. I think a pre-existing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Very philanthropic of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think I would feel bad abandoning the show. So, here's $50K on a yearly sponsorship.
What's the total that gets you
retirement?
Oh,
yeah. Well, I don't have children, so it's probably a lot less.
Or
than
a mortgage.
Total. Yeah. I have a lot less than less than your total.
Yeah. I need a pretty big one.
A couple schmilling for sure.
So you're pretty confident you've got a partner here for life. Sorry.
Yeah. Could you imagine if you had won the lottery when you had the 4 kids under 10? How much easier that would have been?
Yeah.
That would have saved years off your life.
Yeah, I'd look
you would
fabulous.
have way more hair.
I'd look fabulous. Breaded.
Okay. Errors and omissions from yesterday's program.
We should mention Canada Suriname.
Oh, right. Yes.
Canada
big
Suriname
one today.
They played the Canadian team pretty plucky last time they met.
And this is not a friendly?
No, this is Nations League.
Yeah.
And no Alfonso Davies in this match. No Derek Cornelius in this match. But they do get Tejan Buchanan and Ishmael Kone back, who've been injured for some time. So, but the big question is who's going to be beside Bombito in the starting 11 as a defender, because Kamal Miller and Joel Waterman are not Derek Cornelius right now. So we'll see. And goalkeeper is a bit of a question mark too, given the form of Dean St. Clair.
Crépeau, St. Clair. Did they play a second match in this window?
Yep. Against Suriname too. So
okay.
The full tie is happening.
Oh, so home and away.
Yeah.
Where's the match here?
Toronto.
Yeah. Well, BC Place is spoken for this weekend, so they couldn't
That's
possibly
true.
have held it here. Errors and omissions from yesterday's program. We did that story on the Tampa Bay Rays finally making their decision to play at the Yankee spring training facility, Steinbrenner Field, formerly Legends Field. And then Major League Baseball had sort of ushered them to that choice.
Yep.
It has a capacity over 11,000. You asked me about the Phillies and Blue Jays spring training sites and the capacity.
What's the difference?
It's significant. Both those stadiums are 8,500. The Blue Jays in Dunedin, the Phillies in Clearwater. So you're looking at about 3,000 more people per game on 81 games, let's remember here, to go play in the Yankees facility, even if it's across the bay, even if they're pissing off local politicians who have a vote on their stadium financing coming up for a permanent replacement stadium for Trop.
Now, the Blues just renovated, didn't
they? Did.
So
they
the
did.
facilities are probably decent.
So the Blue Jays renovated, unveiled in 2020.
Yeah.
It is beautiful. I believe they call it TD Park. And I was actually at the Phillies facility in 2020 in Clearwater when we were down in Florida for a Blue Jays Phillies spring training game. Baycare Stadium, they call it. Like, it's absolutely beautiful. It's glistening. Think of Nat Bailey, but just new.
Yeah.
That's what they both sort of look like. So, and the Yankees facilities is amazing as well.
But you could
teams have put a lot of money into their spring training sites recently. So they're just small.
You could beef that up to 11. I'm sure you could put temporary seating to get you and if it behooves you politically, I would say if you're the Devil Rays.
Anyways, the bottom line is there are going to be 2 Major League Baseball teams. I would call them the Oakland Athletics, but they dropped the Oakland. They are just the Athletics, who are playing in a AAA park in Sacramento.
They're like Prince. They should just go to a symbol.
One name.
Yeah.
The Athletics who are playing in a AAA park in Sacramento, and the Rays who are playing in a single A park in Tampa this coming season. Wow. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Appreciate you spending some time and connecting with us. Please do subscribe to our assorted channels, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, Blue Sky.
We are Blue Sky.
And, of course, support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. We're live on many of those platforms, 12 noon Pacific time weekdays.
Enjoy this festival, folks.
Absolutely, and keep it local.